The email I had been hoping for finally arrived. I remember sitting there, staring at the screen, reading the same sentence over and over again. It was good news. The kind of news I had imagined receiving. The kind of news I had prayed for. This was the moment I thought would make me feel relieved. Instead, my stomach tightened. My shoulders rose. My thoughts started moving so quickly that I could barely hold on to one of them. What if I cannot handle this? What if I disappoint them? What if they expect more from me than I can give? What if this works for a little while, and then I lose it? Nothing bad had happened, but my body was reacting as though something had gone terribly wrong. And that was the moment I realized I was not only afraid of failing, a part of me was afraid of succeeding too. Not because I did not want success. I did. But wanting a different life and feeling safe enough to live inside that life were not the same thing. That was when Neville Goddard's teachings about states began to make sense to me in a completely different way. Because maybe the reason I kept pulling away from what I wanted was not that I lacked desire. Maybe I had become so familiar with struggling that success felt like entering a world my body did not know how to survive. For months, I had told myself that I was ready. I worked toward the opportunity. I imagined it happening. I thought about what I would do when things finally changed. But when change arrived, I did not feel powerful. I felt exposed. Before the opportunity, I could dream privately. No one could judge what I had not yet created. No one could expect anything from me. No one could watch me try and possibly get something wrong. But now, I had been seen. Now someone was expecting me to step forward. And suddenly, success did not feel like freedom. It felt like pressure. I started checking everything repeatedly. I rewrote messages that were already fine. I delayed decisions I had previously felt confident about. I convinced myself that I needed another plan, another course, another week to prepare. I told myself I was being responsible. But underneath all that preparation was fear. Success had brought me to a doorway, and instead of walking through it, I kept reorganizing everything outside. That pattern was difficult for me to admit, because it did not look like fear at first. It looked like perfectionism. It looked like procrastination. It looked like changing my mind. It looked like being tired at exactly the moment I needed to be consistent. It looked like convincing myself that perhaps I did not want the opportunity after all. But when I became honest with myself, I could feel what was underneath it. Success was asking me to become visible. It was asking me to trust my own decisions. It was asking me to stop waiting for permission. It was asking me to believe that something good could happen without immediately preparing for it to disappear. And my body did not know how to do that yet. I knew how to struggle. I knew how to push through exhaustion. I knew how to keep going when life was difficult. I knew how to expect disappointment before it arrived so that I would not be caught off guard. That version of me had survived a lot. She knew how to function in uncertainty. She knew how to read the room. She knew how to make herself useful. She knew how to keep her expectations low enough that hope could not embarrass her. But success changed the rules. Success asked a different question. Who are you when you no longer have to prove your strength through struggle? Who are you when people begin to recognize your work? Who are you when there is finally space to rest? Who are you when your life begins to look different from the life you have known? That was the part no one had warned me about. Success does not only change what is happening around you, sometimes it challenges the identity you created to survive what happened before. Neville Goddard taught that we experience life from the state we occupy, not simply from the words we repeat, not only from the goals we write down, but from the inner identity we return to again and again. For a long time, I thought occupying a new state meant imagining what I wanted and trying to feel excited about it. So I would imagine success. I would tell myself that everything was working out. I would picture the final result. But then I would return to the rest of my day, still expecting something to go wrong. I said I wanted to be seen, but I remained in the state of someone waiting to be criticized. I said I wanted more, but I remained in the state of someone preparing for loss. I said I wanted peace, but I remained physically braced, as though peace could be interrupted at any moment. I was trying to place a new belief over an old pattern, and that old pattern did not live only in my thoughts. It lived in the way I held my breath while opening an email. It lived in the tension in my jaw. It lived in the guilt I felt whenever I rested. It lived in the urge to over-explain myself. It lived in the belief that every opportunity had to be handled perfectly or it would be taken away. That state had been repeated so often that it felt like my personality. It felt like who I was, but it was also a pattern my body had learned. The nervous system pays attention to repetition. It uses previous experiences to make predictions about what may happen next. And sometimes it does not distinguish between what is truly dangerous and what is simply unfamiliar. That distinction changed the way I understood my behavior. Because familiar does not always mean safe. Sometimes familiar is being overlooked. Sometimes familiar is never having enough. Sometimes familiar is love that must be earned. Sometimes familiar is working until you are exhausted and still feeling that you have not done enough. Sometimes familiar is beginning something meaningful and abandoning it before anyone can judge it. And when we begin stepping outside those patterns, the body may protest. Success may bring visibility. But if visibility once led to criticism, visibility may not feel safe. Success may bring more money. But if money has always been connected to stress, responsibility, or loss, having more may create anxiety instead of relief. Success may require boundaries. But if saying no once threatened connection, boundaries may feel like rejection. Success may make us different from the people around us. And if belonging once depended on staying small, growth can feel like abandonment. So the body creates resistance, not because it hates us, not because it wants to ruin our future, but because it is trying to return us to an identity it recognizes. That is why calling every form of resistance self-sabotage can create so much shame. Sometimes, what looks like self-sabotage is self-protection operating with outdated information. It is not always saying, "You do not deserve this." Sometimes it is saying, "I do not know who we are here." For a long time, I tried to fight that response. I became harder on myself. I told myself to stop being lazy, to become more disciplined, to think more positively. I would force myself forward until I became overwhelmed. Then I would shut down and disappear. And every time that happened, I used it as evidence that I could not trust myself. But I was not failing because I lacked desire. I was trying to overpower a protective response without ever helping my body understand that the circumstances had changed. So I began asking a different question. Instead of asking, "Why am I ruining this?" I asked, what does this success seem to threaten? The answers surprised me. Sometimes it threatened my privacy. Sometimes it threatened my ability to make mistakes without being watched. Sometimes it threatened relationships in which I had always been the one who needed less. Sometimes success felt like more responsibility without more support. And sometimes success frightened me because I believed that once I received something good, I would have to live in constant fear of losing it. Naming those fears did not make them disappear immediately, but it helped me stop confusing them with the truth. I could feel fear without treating fear as an instruction. I could place my feet against the floor, look around the room, release the tension in my jaw, take a slower breath, and remind myself, nothing is chasing me right now. This opportunity is not an emergency. I can be visible without becoming constantly available. I can grow without abandoning myself. I can receive something good without proving that I deserve it through exhaustion. I am allowed to learn how to hold this. That was when I began practicing success differently. I stopped imagining only the dramatic final result. I started imagining the ordinary experience of being the person who could live with it. I imagined receiving good news and allowing myself to enjoy it before searching for the problem. I imagined sending my work without rereading it 20 times. I imagined being complimented and simply saying, "Thank you." I imagined earning more without immediately expecting a crisis to take it away. I imagined finishing my work and resting without feeling guilty. I imagined being seen and remaining myself. Those moments seemed small, but they were helping me build familiarity with a different state. A state where success did not automatically mean pressure. A state where visibility did not mean attack. A state where responsibility did not mean carrying everything alone. A state where peace did not mean something bad was about to happen. I was no longer demanding that my body leap from survival into complete confidence overnight. I was giving it small experiences of safety. I followed through on one decision without changing the plan. I allowed one good moment to remain good. I rested after one completed task. I made one mistake and did not use it as a reason to disappear. I let myself be seen without explaining every part of myself. And slowly, my body began collecting new evidence. We have been here before. We did not lose ourselves. We were visible and remained safe. We received something good and did not have to suffer to keep it. We made a mistake, and the world did not end. This is how the unfamiliar begins to feel possible, not through force, through repetition. Maybe success has been approaching you too, and every time it comes close, you become tired. You change the plan. You find another reason you are not ready. You begin criticizing the very thing you once wanted. Maybe you have called yourself lazy, inconsistent, or self-destructive. But perhaps part of you still associates expansion with danger. Perhaps being seen reminds you of being judged. Perhaps receiving more makes you afraid that more will be demanded from you. Perhaps success feels like losing your place in the relationships that were built around the struggling version of you. Or perhaps the version of success you imagined requires you to overwork, perform perfectly, and abandon your own needs. No wonder your body resists that version of it. The answer is not to force yourself into a life that feels like another form of survival. The answer is to create a version of success that includes safety. Success where you are allowed to rest. Success where you are allowed to make mistakes. Success where you do not have to explain yourself to everyone. Success where being visible does not mean being accessible at all times. Success where growth does not require self-abandonment. Neville was right that we must become familiar with the state of the person who already has what we desire. But becoming familiar is a process. The new state may feel awkward before it feels natural. Peace may feel empty before it feels peaceful. Visibility may feel threatening before it feels freeing. And success may feel unsafe before your body understands that you are no longer living under the same conditions that created the fear. So when success begins to feel uncomfortable, do not immediately assume you are on the wrong path. Pause before you pull away. Ask yourself, is something truly unsafe right now? Or am I entering a state I have not practiced living in yet? You do not have to become fearless before you move forward. You only have to stop treating every protective feeling as a command to return to your old life. Let your body gather new evidence. Let success become ordinary. Let receiving become safe. Because you are not only learning how to create a different life, you are teaching your nervous system that you are allowed to remain inside it. Here at Heal Calmly, we regulate the body first, so belief finally works. And in the next video, we are going deeper into why change can feel so personal. Because your nervous system may not only be protecting you from success, it may be trying to protect the identity you have known your entire life.